I always try to reframe it and go into the mindset of why not me? What's the worst case scenario that could happen? Okay, play that out. Then think about what's the best case scenario and who will benefit if I stay small. Worst case scenario, you fail. Best case scenario, there's a lot of best case scenario. And I think it's really going in with that mindset of I can do this. I have come so far, then I have so much further to go. I think people don't give themselves enough credit and that confidence in their abilities and just like trusting in themselves. Because you've come so far, I've come so far, we have friends and family, and then you're like, well, did you forget that you did that thing that was seemingly impossible? Like, you just made so much headway so far in this journey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unmuted Moments. So if you're joining us for the very first time, welcome. This is a podcast exploring the journey to finding and owning your voice. I'm your host, Ahis, and today I am thrilled to be joined by Linda Ta Yonemoto. Linda is a certified financial education instructor, that's CFEI, and the founder of Good For You Money, a platform where she shares relatable and practical insights on personal finance and career growth. She's passionate about helping first-gen professionals and underrepresented communities build wealth and freedom on their own terms. Before launching Good For You Money, she worked in corporate marketing and strategy, but realized she wanted more freedom and a life that reflected her own values. So in today's episode, we'll explore the intersection of financial independence and voice, how taking ownership of your finances can really help you find your voice and empower you to live life on your own terms. Did I do a good job? How did I do on your bio
Yeah,
there, Linda?
thank you. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to our conversation all week.
Welcome to the show. I've been following your work for a while now, so I'm really glad we're finally getting to have this conversation. Let's start by getting to know your story. What was your upbringing like, and how did that shape your voice growing up?
So, I am a first gen Southeast Asian American, and I grew up navigating two different worlds. My parents were refugees who fled Vietnam. We came over and immigrated to the US. Growing up, I was sort of like a cultural bridge between the old world versus the new world and striving to build up the American dream. We didn't really talk about money in my house. It was really about survival, how to make it. When I started earning more, it felt really difficult because there were feelings of shame, about confusion, about fear, trying to figure out how to navigate, like striving for a better life in America, as well as wealth and work. And there were a lot of cultural norms embedded within like the immigrant experience as well, in terms of learning, be a good worker, don't rock the boat, stay quiet, be grateful, don't be bold, and don't stick out. There's this idea that the nail that sticks out is the one that gets hammered down in societal norms. For Asian cultures, there are probably similar ideas as well that you faced and that a lot of your listeners face.
So, in terms of the fear and some of the concerns that we just talked about, was there any sort of moments that could serve as a good example of some of those things growing up or in high school where you felt like you had to maybe shrink or not show your true self or hide your true self?
I think within the academic setting, it's always wait to put up your hand and wait to speak, wait until you have that permission to give that answer. It's that kind of setting while you're growing up and learning, but it doesn't work in the real world, which is sort of a tough learning that we all experience as first gens, as immigrants, to figure out how to carve that path for yourself and set yourself up for success and show that like executive presence.
You just went to the very heart of this show, how to hopefully expose people to being comfortable with self-expression, right? We come from all kinds of backgrounds where the thing is to be humble, right? So to say something when you're called, but as you mentioned, like you get in the corporate world and it's a different ball game, and making it less taboo, and for us to be very comfortable. Like I can advocate for myself if I do a good project, I should take
Mhm.
credit for it and not just sit in the back. So that's really the heart of what I'm hopefully trying to achieve with the show. So we've talked about different beliefs from an immigrant or first gen perspective. Was there any belief that's stuck with you for a long time that you now realize isn't true?
I think one belief that I felt was going to be my reality when I was growing up and when I moved into adulthood was that I am not someone who would get to be wealthy because
Hmm.
I didn't have those role models growing up. I didn't see anyone who lived that kind of life. Or maybe they did and it was sort of like a flashy faux sort of life. And I'm like, what are they actually selling me? So it's like reversing the idea that I could be that person that was successful, even though I didn't see the types of role models around me within my family, within my friend set, and I realized that over time, I was going to have to speak up. I was going to have to showcase that I could be someone who could be successful. I was not going to wait for permission anymore. And I had to give myself that permission and see, like, sort of like that envisioning exercise where you're manifesting who you want to be.
That's very powerful. So it kind of reminds me of the whole idea of why it's important to have role models.
Yeah.
And because if you see someone who, whether it's wealth or whatever it is, whether it's in a specific profession, someone who looks like you're doing that thing, then it seems more attainable. So I did a little mini series on LinkedIn this week about just the
Yes,
immigrant
I
journey.
loved your mini series that you
And
posted.
oh, thank you, thank you. And I think the goal there is to expose people that
Mhm.
you too can, you too can be like that. You too can do that because we all start from very modest means for the most part.
Mhm.
But that should not lock you into that particular job or that particular space. There are lots of role models out there, and I think the hard part is we often don't see people don't showcase those other parts, right? All the
People don't
challenges, like
talk
how the
about.
sausage is made, like the behind the scenes. You only see the end product, so it's
Mhm.
easy to just think that they came from a privileged background or whatever, and that's why they were able to achieve that, and you didn't, so maybe you can't. It's a very important lesson for me, and I try to any opportunity to have LinkedIn, this podcast, to try to say, hey, like no matter where you're starting from, your dreams are valid. You can do it too. So for you, in terms of that mindset of starting off not thinking that you could be wealthy or you could be financially secure one day, was there any particular moments that you sort of realized that that's not true? Like you can become whatever you want to become?
I think it was a slow unraveling and a slow process in terms of the stories that I used to tell myself. And the like unmuting itself was more of an internal process. I always recommend therapy to folks, giving yourself the permission to rest, to define your values, giving up that sense of needing to be perfect. It's like perfection is like the worst, and like striving for that will really get in the way of all your progress. What you had shared this week in terms of all your stories, I think in terms of the struggle, it was so incredibly compelling. And I think we need more of that transparency and the truth. For some people, it could be that one moment, right?
Yeah,
But there's
yeah,
a slow buildup over time.
yeah.
And then you wonder, like, you have that moment where you're like, okay, well, why not me? Like, why not?
For me, as I look back, I think it was probably my late 20s. Well, I'm 35 now, so not too long ago, that I started feeling very confident
Yeah.
to express myself. And, a lot of it too is like, as we mentioned, the background coming from modest means. Business school was like one of the turning points for me.
Hmm.
Um, because even from college, I went to a small school in the middle of
Yeah.
Kentucky. It's cool because everyone had tuition. It was tuition free college, so everyone had. So that meant everybody was kind of in the same economic buckets, right?
Yeah.
Economically, like people were kind of in the same like segments. So we're has exposed to like all the different parts of the socioeconomic ladder. But anyway, so starting in the corporate world, I still had that stigma of, okay, these people went to Ivy League schools, so they did this,
Hmm.
and so they must be better than me. And then I think business school, going to business school and seeing my classmates were from all kinds of big schools. They've had all kinds of jobs. I'm like, you know what? I deserve that thing too. That
Yeah.
job, I deserve that job too. So for me, that was probably if I had to pick like a big moment. But it doesn't, I guess it shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't have to go to business school. Right? That's what I'm trying to do with
I
this
didn't go to
podcast,
business
right?
school, but I
Yeah,
do
exactly.
commend all the folks that do.
You shouldn't have to spend a lot of money I mean, I didn't go specifically because I want to go find myself in business school. It just sort of happened there. I'm sure people have
Mhm.
different ways it can happen. But ideally, you don't have to spend a lot of money or wait that long to
Mhm.
get to that point where you can feel like you can pursue whatever those goals are that you want.
Like, embrace that hustle mindset and apply it into different settings. You can definitely go in the traditional background of academia, getting your BA and then
Sure.
getting your MA or all those
Yeah.
wonderful things. But you can also be a serial pivoter and find some success that way.
In terms of the concept of being a serial pivoter, what does that mean? Is that referring to switching careers, switching jobs, switching industries? Double
Yeah,
click on that.
I think there is a lot of pressure for first gens to have it figured out from the get-go. Like,
Mhm.
if you don't have it figured out, you might, like, put yourself on the path of failure. And that's certainly not the case. I think people need to give themselves a lot more grace, and space to figure out, like, what their career journeys could potentially look like. I call myself a late bloomer and a career pivoter because I certainly am. I didn't know what I was going to do when I graduated. I just know I wanted to help people. Graduated as a BA in social welfare right into the Great Recession. No one was hiring. It's certainly not in the
I
government
was
at
in
that time.
college when it happened. So I was lucky because I
Yeah.
graduated in 2011. And I think the worst
Mhm.
was behind us at that point.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But to all the people who are facing some hardships right now or just getting their footing, I think there are always going to be opportunities that opened up. Like, back then for me, it was finding a career in like digital marketing. And like now it's for a lot of folks finding maybe a different path with AI or healthcare or where there might be a need.
So I guess the lesson here is to be open minded.
Be
Open
open-minded,
minded.
be adaptable, be open to change. Your first job, like you said, is not going to be your last job. It's not going to be your forever job. It could just be the stepping stone to something better.
It just reminds me of a concept. Like, me and my wife will always go back and forth. Like when we're making certain decisions, whether it's like, because my wife is in medicine and she had to make a lot of decisions for about like
Mhm.
what med school to go to, what residency, what this to go to, all the kind of decisions. And sometimes you get paralyzed, you know what I mean? Or like which major, or what, which area to study. You get paralyzed like, okay, I could do A, B, and C. And you do like pros and cons list and all these different things and all this. I guess for me, sometimes I'm like, you know what? Just pick one and do it.
You
If it
could
doesn't turn
you
out
could
to what you want, you can
change.
switch.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Because that's not usually in top of our mind that we can switch. I think we put too much pressure trying to get it right the first time. So I think for me, I've come to that place now where I don't spend too much time thinking like, if I'm making this one decision, I got to get it right. If it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, like most things in life, except like, I guess if you're sick, most things in life, you have options, right? You can always switch and do
Uh,
something different. So let's come to the present and talk about what you do now. Can you tell us about Good For You Money and what are you trying to achieve with this platform?
yeah, so Good For You Money is a platform that I launched to really share my personal story with first gen folks. So it could be like first gen in your family to graduate, first gen to get a corporate job, first gen to strive for wealth, and to realize that you can create options for yourself. In a way, it's sort of like a love letter to the version of myself that didn't know what she wanted when she first started. I try to share my personal journey through the lens of a first in my family to accomplish a lot, because I know there are those who are looking for role models. So I share financial literacy education as well as career growth strategies without shame or fear or jargon through the lens of someone who has experienced that. I didn't have a lot of role models when I was growing up, especially in that space. So I hope to be something for others who might need that right now. Longer term, if you want to call it a BHAG goal in corporate speak, I would to reach 100,000 first gen women, then
Amen to
build
that.
freedom,
Okay.
super specific, um, by 2030, and hopefully really inspire them that they can take that journey for themselves and that they can create success for themselves and support their families.
What inspired you to take this journey of helping people through financial education, financial literacy, career growth? Like, what's so inspired? I guess we've talked about some of your experience, but was there any more specific experiences that made you want to pursue this path?
I struggled so much when I graduated out of college into that Great Recession. And I really struggled to find areas of inspiration and where I could learn about financial independence and leveraging your career in order to achieve that. A lot of folks will talk about the hustle culture of entrepreneurship. I say kudos to them. I love what they're trying to build, but I think there are a lot of opportunities that a corporate career path can present to someone as a normal person that, maybe doesn't want to do create their own business or create that like startup because there's a lot of risk that's involved. So I was drawn to it more of a way to ensure like early retirement, financial security for myself and for my family, finding peace, and as a way to eventually like escape the path I didn't want. So my dad was a government employee. He worked in food service. And I would see him drive 3 hours a day, like an hour and a half each way in like Orange County, LA traffic. And I thought, gosh, that is so incredibly tough. It's like a struggle. He did that to support a family of five, made less than $40,000 a year, lived in a tiny bedroom apartment. I didn't know what top sheets were because we didn't have that. And so I thought, there are probably people out there like that, just like me, who really struggled. And they're like, well, how do I get from point A to the next point where I want to go?
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for having a platform like this. I personally, as I mentioned, have followed your work and I enjoyed. I think you had on IG, you had the one where it was like every age from 16. I think it was like you had the message for yourself from like 16, 17 up to 36. Is that?
It's like a unwinding of stories I wish I told myself or I wish I knew when I was younger.
And the thing I really appreciate about your posts, the insights you share, it's the relatability of it. Something like a lot of us can kind of see ourselves. And it's not like, I went to this Ivy League school and then I got this high paying job at Wall Street and you can do it too.
Like, I didn't have the Wall Street job, that's for sure. I think people always see that tippy top, that iceberg, but they don't know what all that struggle looks like underneath. I think that's the struggle is where you really find the inspiration.
Since you started So Good For Your Money, how have you enjoyed the process, this new life of this path? And has there been any like surprises?
I would say that I have remained unmuted online for a long time. I would speak that corporate speak, sharing those corporate stories. And to share and reveal pieces of yourself takes a certain level of courage, especially to your peers. Yep. An age where people can judge you, troll you, get all sorts of DMs. But on the opposite end of the coin, it's been such a rewarding experience because I've had people come out who I've worked with years ago and they're like, I saw you post and was like, I'm really interested, or I'm on that journey, or you gave me inspiration. It creates opportunities for connection and friendship, just like you and I. We were able to discover each other and you can meet some really interesting people outside of the network that you probably wouldn't have access to. You live in Atlanta. I live in Las Vegas. Yeah. We never would have connected given your journey in the finance space or Google and elsewhere on the opposite side of it. Yeah.
That's one thing I've appreciated about putting myself out there more. It's just the connections, right? A lot of people reach out like, oh, is there anything you need? Can I be of help? Or sometimes people do have genuine questions about careers that I could help them with, whether it's specific career paths in finance and accounting or business school.
Yes.
And I think in our new world, I don't know what the world's going to look like with AI in the next few years. But I do think no matter how it goes, like connections is still going to be very important.
Absolutely.
And again, talking about finding your voice, I think it's going to be even more important to have a voice for people to know you. I mean, if AI could do everything, then what can you now do? It's like the personality thing. Who's this person? Because hopefully, who knows? Maybe AI can replace our personality. I hope not.
I don't think that will be the case. The information is out there. The barrier to access that information will be so lowered that it will really be that personal experience. And then people will want to buy from you or want you in terms of what you offer and your story and what you have to present versus something that's just a product at the end of the day.
So if you're listening, I think it's something to think about, like think about the next 3 to 5 years. Nobody knows how it's going to pan out specifically, but what do you do now? And we talked about having an open mind earlier on in the show. What can you do that's going to stick, that's going to remain you? Like it'd be hard for someone else to replace, or it can have your own mark on something. Like, this is my thing. I think that's going to be important for you to be able to point to something. This is my thing. This is what I'm known for. And this is what people come to me for. It's hard sometimes when you have a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 10 p.m. job. I think to the extent that people can start thinking about this type of thing? It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be like I don't know, IG influencer or whatever. But I think, right, but it's still important for people to at least know who you are. So still sort of keeping on the theme of financial freedom, financial independence. One of the things you talk about is getting to a point where you could be work optional. Some people call it like retiring early, or this sort of fire a movement or concept. But can you just speak for people who might be unfamiliar with this whole concept of retiring early or work optional? Can you
Yeah,
just describe it for people who might be hearing this for the first time?
absolutely. FIRE stands for financial independence, retire early or retire electively. It means that you've achieved a level of wealth, and there are different levels and stages where you might be able to hit coast fire, lean fire, regular fire, or fat fire.
What's
It's
that's like five, 4 fires or 5 fires?
it's
How many
like
main?
different levels. So like the level of comfort that you would need to achieve in order to have enough so that you conventionally like retire at 65, knowing you've like secured yourself for old age, or some people on the earlier end of the spectrum will say, I've saved 25 to 33 times what I need to spend in a year in order to comfortably live out the rest of my life. That doesn't mean you stop working, just means that you get to say no to a lot of things. You get the permission to remove yourself from the path of burnout and really do things that are more aligned with what you value.
I think that's a good connection to the whole voice then, right? Hopefully, in getting to choose which path you take, now you don't have to take any jobs. You can select the job that better aligns with my values and morals, and that's what I want to do. And hopefully in that job, you will have the confidence or be comfortable enough that
Um,
since that's going to align with your values, to be more expressive of yourself and have a voice. So for people who actually, one question I was going to ask is you talking about different types of fire. So, because traditionally, right, 65 is the retirement
65 is like
age.
the
65.
retirement age when you can access Social Security in the US.
What's the most aggressive you've seen or heard in terms of retirement? In terms of like,
Oh
on a
God.
what's the most aggressive age you've heard?
I think it's tough to compare because people have such different levels in terms of what they need to survive. But
Yeah.
you probably seen like the CNBC Make It articles. Like I've seen people do it in their like 20 somethings where like they eat beans and rice or like they amass a huge real estate portfolio. They work 3 jobs, they're overemployed, they made some crazy engineering salary or had some huge payout. I was none of those things and it's still possible. But I think there are a lot of trade-offs you make if you aggressively pursue retirement in your 20s. Kudos to those people though. Applaud.
Yeah, I guess in terms of timing, some people like us, I guess, late bloomers. If someone who knew about this idea and maybe your first job, I don't know, maybe right out of college, maybe you could start thinking about that and planning your life accordingly. But for some people who like you only had enough for the basic needs at that time, it's probably not retirement. It's probably not always top of your mind.
Yeah.
So, where I guess for someone who say I don't know, say not too aggressive, say I want to get to a point where in my I don't call it 40s, 50s, I can be work optional. I don't want to wait till 65 to retire. I want to start thinking about that concept now. Where do I begin? How do I even start thinking about this? Like, there's some analysis I have to do first. Like, where do I start?
Yes, let's get into the nitty-gritty. I think it starts with a sense of awareness. You need to really
Mhm.
track where you spend without judgment. You can do that with apps, you can do that within like a spreadsheet. I think once you have a good understanding of where your money goes, not just swiping a credit card and seeing what that bill looks like at the end of the month in terms of your statement, but really figuring out where that goes in terms of categories, then building out at least a 1 month emergency fund. That buffer will give you a lot
One
of
month.
confidence at a minimum.
Okay.
Given like with the economic climate, that's not feasible for a lot of people. So I would just say at a minimum, start with 1 month. You can build up over time. I would recommend building up that emergency fund for like 6 months or a year. But 1 month, it's going to give you some financial cushion because there will be emergencies that pop up. Like I've had tires pop, my car stall. Like, you have to go to the emergency room, etc. And all those surprises do add up. Once you like build up your emergency fund, really focus on making sure you don't accrue more debt or pay off the debt. There's like over $1 trillion worth of debt in the US. It's kind of scary. Once you get that foundation in, you're gonna figure out how to optimize your biggest costs in terms of like a sound like budgeting plan. So maybe that's like a 60-30-10 split in terms of like essentials versus non-essentials and then planning for the future. If it comes down to it, the math is really simple, but like executing it is a lot harder. People ask me, "Hey, Linda, what's the secret?" The secret is you just have to save and invest more than you
Yeah.
spend. But, it takes some good habits to put in place, and it really takes some time to think through, okay, how do I avoid the kind of frictionless experience that is available nowadays? Because it's so easy to spend money, swipe your credit card, plug
And
in.
you have no idea how much you've racked
Yeah.
up.
And frugality can be your superpower, especially early on.
So to recap, step one is to have some form of emergency savings. Start with 1 month and hopefully ramp it up to 6 months. Step two, get a better picture of your expenses.
Mhm.
And then I guess this categorization between your essentials and your nice to haves. Is there a rule, some shorthand rule in terms of like you need X times your normal annual budget expense as your goal?
So,
Is there something like
goal
that?
is to retire. You'll need between 25 at a minimum or upward of 33 times your annual salary. And I think that's the end goal. I don't want people to focus on the end goal and think, oh my gosh,
Sure.
how am I supposed to? I would say start small and it can build up over time. You
Yeah.
can get that match at your employer. You can contribute like that money, but that debt payoff is going to be a really important step in
Oh
tracking
yeah.
to begin with.
You did mention about paying off your debt.
Yeah. And
Like,
grow wealth. Even
yeah.
if you're making a lot of money, they have huge salaries, but then they're like, what do I have left at the end of it?
Yeah.
Food
That's
for thought.
what ultimately matters. Part of the reason why we moved, we've lived in a lot of big cities. We lived in New York, Chicago, San Francisco.
All the high
And
cost.
if I'm
Yeah.
being honest, part of why we moved here was just more the affordability. Like it was just more affordable. The type of life we wanted was way more achievable here than in any of those big cities. Sometimes you may not be able to do that if you have family. And, say you're from LA and that's where your family is, or you're from San Francisco or New York. It could be difficult. It may not be as easy as it's easier to just like up and leave. But that's something you would have to think about.
Yeah. I mean, geo arbitrage, that's definitely a good thing. And I think Atlanta's a great city. Love
It's
your like
awesome.
green belt area.
It's awesome. We love the place. It just gets too hot sometimes. I
Humidity.
guess I rather too hot than because in Chicago, I rather like too hot than too cold, I guess.
Yeah.
So one of the things, whenever I hear things like fire, the thing that makes me always like pause is like, okay, how about in terms of like immigrants, for example, you usually have a lot of commitments, like on the family standpoint. Like sometimes you have to send money home. Sometimes you're the main person for the entire family, which I have been. So it's like your parents, your siblings, and sometimes even more extended family. So in that context, how do you think about it?
That's a tough question. Yes, it's really hard. It's complex, but it's possible. I feel for the people that want to honor their values and your
Yeah.
family. Supporting your family doesn't mean sacrificing all of your future. You need to figure out what boundaries you're going to be setting with compassion. Yeah, that comes down to saying, I want to help you long term, but I have to be sustainable now. And I have to pay off my own debts or make sure I have enough budget so I can afford groceries or childcare. For some people, that might mean living in a multi-generational house. For
Yeah.
some people, that might mean living in a multi-generational household or cutting back on expenses where they can or making sacrifices in other areas. Like for me, that meant I didn't buy the nicest things. I own a very old used car. I'm not trying to keep up with the Joneses. I think when you're navigating that as a first gen or as an immigrant, you're like, well, this is what I think wealth looks like. This is what my peers think wealth looks like. It comes down to, what do I value? How am I
Yeah.
going to be true to myself? And then figuring out how that budget works.
Yeah.
If you trust yourself and you figure out how to set those boundaries, you can do that with compassion and in a sustainable way. while supporting yourself, your family, and your future.
I 100% agree to the point about what your values are. And when you come to America, you see all the fancy cars, you see all the fancy things, you know what I mean? You see all the big things and fancy things, and that is the goal. One day,
Yeah.
I want to be in a place where I can have an American dream, as they call it, like a nice home, a nice cars, and my kids a good school. But then I guess that's where it comes to the point of values, because that's just a now short-term thing. You could spend, enjoy a big life, and then have nothing left. So now what? What are my true values? If it's helping my family, maybe I don't need a 5-bedroom home. Maybe I do a 3-bedroom home, but then still have some capacity to help, like whether it's my mom or whoever, the person that I think it's important to help. But yeah, it just whenever I think about this concept, it just for me, I'm like, how does the math even work when there's like a whole village depending on you for stuff? So still thinking about complexities about this idea. Kids. So when you're doing that number, whether it's 28 or 30 times your annual budget, is that because I imagine for kids as they grow up, expenses go up, like college and all that kind of stuff. How does that impact how one thinks about the budget if you
So
have kids?
I think that's tough. I don't want to speak for the people that have kids because I'm actually child free. We don't have kids. I am the fun, like rich auntie. And I would say that
Everybody needs a fun, rich auntie now.
I'm the fun, rich auntie. I have a niece that I absolutely love, and she has wonderful parents. They're like solidly trying to raise her as someone who does not live in a life of privilege. They hack at things like they go to free events, they go to community playgrounds. She plays with like used toys. They're part of like community Facebook groups, and she like I think it's gosh, I don't know, Ahis. I think you should be the one answering this. How do you raise your kids to make sure they understand the value of money in a meaningful way? And I think for me, it's like when I have the chance, I want to spend time with my family, I niece.
Yeah,
They don't care about
yeah.
stuff. They want to make sure that you're there for them, and that's more important.
It's a good question. Short answer is I don't have the answer yet, but it's something that I constantly think about. For me, the angle I think about it is from like coming from, a not so wealthy background, there's certain attributes you learn, right? You learn that not everything is given, right? You got to work for stuff. You
Oh
got to
yeah.
work for to pay your car bill, your car notes, whatever it is. You got to work for stuff. And the thing I do think about as it relates to our kids is that they definitely will not have the same situation. The situation is definitely better than we did, me and my wife, than our situation, right? So it's kind of like, how do we teach them, like, some of these things that you enjoy, it's not given. Like, not everybody, I didn't grow up with a washing machine or a dishwasher. I had to wash dishes by hand and wash laundry by hand. But like now we have a dishwasher and we have a laundry machine, like most homes do. And certain things like that. I'm like, how do we teach her that certain things are not given? It's not like it's very normal that everyone has a dishwasher. It's not a normal thing in most places around the world. So that's something that we constantly think about. How do we make sure they understand that you have to work for these things and these things don't magically show up? So I don't have an answer today, right now, but it's something to constantly think about and talk about. Hopefully, as time goes on, we'll find different ways to implement it.
So it sounds like it's also sharing the stories of your past and what that experience was like, and being open about that, and making sure your children or your nieces, your nephews understand what a life of privilege they are able to live in. Maybe to also find opportunities to give back to your community and volunteer and do meaningful things.
Yes, exactly. I do think the storytelling, I think it's important too, as you mentioned, like telling them the stories of our growing up to hopefully make them realize, oh, we didn't have this, we didn't have that. Also, like taking trips. I'm hoping we
Yeah.
can take them as they grow up. We can go on trips around the world to see different parts of the world too. That hopefully they can kind
Mhm.
of see that not everything's the same everywhere. Like the different
Mm-mm.
challenges that people have to go through and overcome in life. So I want to pivot because in this show, one of my focus is to learn from my guests how people overcome things like self doubt and imposter syndrome. No matter how successful anybody is, you still have moments where you go through that sort of self doubt. What are you trying to do something that's entirely brand new and you don't know how to feel about this? So I try to get practical insights that listeners could glean from and hopefully implement. So when you have situations where you start feeling imposter syndrome or self-doubt, or you're not confident about yourself for a
Mhm.
particular project or thing, how do you navigate those? Do you have any go-to frameworks or things to help you navigate those negative self-feelings?
So, as a woman of color who's had to step in spaces, I think you learn to be really uncomfortable, sit in the discomfort of the feelings of self doubt, and still know that you can act with trust in yourself. I always try to reframe it and go into the mindset of, why not me? Like, what happens? What's the
Mm.
worst case scenario can
Oh,
happen? Go ahead, play that out. Then think about, okay, what's the best case scenario? And who will benefit if I stay small, if I don't
mm,
do this? And then you just show up anyway. Worst case
mm,
scenario, you fail. Best case scenario, there's a lot of best case scenario. And I think it's really going in with that mindset of like, okay, I can do this. I have come so far, then I have so much further to go. I think people don't give themselves enough credit and that confidence in their abilities and just like trusting in themselves. Because you've come so far, I've come so far, we have friends and family, and then you're like, well, did you forget that you did that thing that was seemingly impossible? You just made so much headway so far in this journey.
I absolutely love this framing of like what's the worst case scenario and what's the best case scenario. I think humans, not just like humans, I think we tend to live in that worst case scenario zone, and we only think about it in the negative things that could come up from an event or an activity. We don't think about the positives enough. So thank you for that. As we wrap up here, just a couple of more questions. One, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So I think there are a couple of pieces of advice. I would say if there was one tagline in terms of all the Finn influencers that I've heard, it would be Paula Pant, who says, you can afford anything, but not everything. Love her. She was like an influencer in the space when I didn't see any women of color. It's like when I was early in the journey.
What's her
Another
name?
personal, Paula
Paula,
Pant. She's a big
like Pant?
podcaster. So
Okay,
Paula.
I'll check
There's
her out.
and my other piece of advice is that you have to have a really good BS filter. Don't take advice from people who live lives that you don't want to live or who've
Hmm.
never experienced what you're going through or where you hope to go. There are those people who, will be happy to sit in the situations they are and they don't want to change. And I think if you do want to change, you have to look for the community or the inspiration, even if you don't have the internal drive yourself to start, to figure out where you want to go. You have to remain focused on your goals. You don't want to be surrounded by negativity or people who want to drag you down or criticize you. Focus on what you want to do. And one day they'll be looking back at you and thinking, how the heck did he or she do that? And I think that's the place where you want to be. So I love that you have started this podcast and you're sharing like your personal story and all these personal stories for people who have made it and that struggle and what that looks like. And just to help inspire people to know that it's possible for themselves too.
Wow, that's a mic drop moment. I feel like I should just like end here now. We should just wrap it up. Thank you. So just a couple more. One of the questions I like to ask my guest is, for those big moments in your life, doing a big presentation or trying to do something uncomfortable, are there any songs, one or two songs that you use to inspire you, to fire you up to get ready for such an activity or an event?
You asked me to share my playlist. I have so many. They're like power
Okay.
ballads. So I'm a Swiftie, so I love Level Up.
Okay.
Great song.
Level up.
Kelly
Okay.
Clarkson. Oh, I love her so much. Her show. I know it's like a little bit older, but stronger. So what doesn't kill
Not for
you makes you
millennials, not for us.
stronger. Okay, so Gen Z, if you haven't heard it,
Go look it
go
up
take a
on
listen.
Spotify. I'm not going to sing it. I like
I mean,
stronger too, but
I
I'm
would
not going
listen to you if you say it.
to. I am not going to do that to listeners. Maybe I could have a special
Yeah.
episode for that. Thank you for sharing those. And final question for people who stayed with us through the entire episode and got to this point, what's the one thing you hope people walk away after hearing our conversation about your story today?
You don't have to be perfect. You can start exactly where you are. You can change your story. And financial freedom and peace isn't just for people who already have money. It's for people like us. It's for people like you, Heath, people like me, people like all of your listeners. And I hope they feel inspired to start their own journeys.
I feel very inspired. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. So, Linda, thank you. I really appreciate you joining the show today and sharing your voice, your story, on your journey. It's clear financial freedom, right? It's not just an idea. If you want to really work in that journey, there's a lot of work in the execution. But that's why people like you are out there to help provide guidance and practical tips and insights to help people in the journey. So for people who want to learn more about this journey, how can people follow your work and what you do?
So I'm very active on LinkedIn, so they can find me there. But if you don't want to be commenting and posting on LinkedIn as your boss is watching, which I can understand, they can also find me at Good For You Money on Instagram. And I would love to connect there. And if they do connect, please mention that they heard about me on his podcast, Unmuted Moments.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I would add the links to the IG page, LinkedIn page, and the show notes as well. So for everyone joining, thank you for your time. Thanks again for listening. I am Ahis. And until next time, stay unmuted.